Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. It might look slightly strange. So, Adam is gallivanting around the UK somewhere with work, and Dawn has the CQC with her at the moment. So, she might join us, she might not. But I'm joined by the lovely Lucy Buxton. Good evening, Lucy.
Hello, how are you?
How are you? Yeah, no, I'm good, thank you. You?
Yeah, I'm great, thanks.
Good. So, we normally do a roundup of the week, and we don't normally have a guest, but I thought I'm not going to sit there and round up the week on my own. I thought I might as well use you and have you here. So, yes, first thing on my list, other than every time I turn on the radio or the TV, it's talking about the Walker's crisps shortage. Nothing about the Ed Balls Crisis in Care documentary last night. What did you think to it?
I thought it was really good. I thought it was factual, educational and real. And real in the sense that it not just real for what people are experiencing, but actually real about what a care home is like and what it's like to work in care. Though it was, for me, there was a lot of stuff that I thought was really good, as in line with how things should be. Obviously, as my compliance brain, kind of, sitting and thinking, and I thought Ed was brilliant. It was really interesting as well with him gaining the insight into his mum's care, and I think that was quite enlightening, the fact that he didn't realise a lot of the stuff. So I think for providers, do we ensure that our relatives who are involved and who have the right to know what's going on in somebody's care actually know what things mean, because we as professionals know what things mean, but we make assumptions that other people do. So I think it could be quite educational for us as a team, as well as those using social care.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I know I was on Twitter, and there were so many comments from members of the public that were asking, why did he do that, or why don't they do that? And actually, what I found from it was great that those conversations were happening, because then there were people from the NHS answering the question. I was jumping on it, other people in social care, and I thought actually it was a real good kind of eye-opener and a lesson learned for people that don't normally watch or know anything about care. I think for me, it really opened everything you said, but it also opened kind of a lot of providers' eyes, and kind of cemented to me that we need to do a lot more around kind of career pathways for staff to retain them. Obviously, we saw the young lad that was leaving to go and work in the NHS just because there was no career pathway and the pay was better. And actually, we need to do more as a sector to encourage the younger generation in, and then to retain them within the system.
Yeah, no, definitely enable people to realise that you can do lots of things with your career. I mean, ultimately, look at me. I started as a carer at 15, and now I've got my own business. And people don't realise that you can go into social care, get knowledge, get skills, which can actually benefit you and support you in your own personal world as well as your professional world, and then eventually go and, if you want to set up your own business or become a director or own your own care, facility, then yeah. And it is that, it's about not just the career pathway, but the camaraderie. It's about people being there for people, and that was clearly evident with the programme. And I think for me, it was about the education around things like CHC funding, which people don't know about. It's a minefield. So unless you have to actually go into that, and certainly from that education that I've had in my career has enabled me in my personal world for, say, like CHC knowledge and other areas. So yeah, I thought it was a really good programme. I'm quite excited about next week's programme, see where that goes.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think for me, anybody watching that doesn't know what CHC is, it's continuing healthcare funding. And obviously, you and I, Lucy, know firsthand, how hard it is to get that funding. And actually, you saw that gentleman bedbound, couldn't get the funding. And actually, I've been there. I spent so many hours arguing with commissioners about actually this person is bedbound, requires, two carers, somebody in the room the whole time. And what care do they get if you don't fund that? And yeah, I think the only thing that I think it missed for me was that it didn't draw on the people that lived in that care home's experience of what COVID was like. It obviously touched on the manager and the staff, and I thought that was really powerful. But it would have been nice while they were there just to have kind of got people that use the care services thoughts and opinions, and whether or not they've seen the family and how it's impacted, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think what Ed said was quite telling, the fact that he'd only seen his mum in the February when she'd gone into the care home and hadn't seen her, what did he say, for about 16 months. To not be able to see a loved one for that amount of time, you know, for how it has been for families, but then how it's been for the people receiving the care, and actually thinking the family are there and then not there, and then people who you know live with dementia, and how they have, you know, moments of being lucid and being aware, and it must have been so confusing and disorientating. And then also the different roles that staff have had to take on, roles that in some cases probably best that they don't take on, almost, you know, becoming that extra kind of layer of family in a sense, which then puts more stress and pressure on them as members of staff.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that was one thing that the show really highlighted, which a lot of, you know, the public I saw messaging about, were care workers on minimum wage looking after somebody at the end of life, and the skills and making sure that person's comfortable and has all their needs cared for. And actually they're doing that on minimum wage, and that is a skilled, you know, job. And actually I think that's really highlighted it for a lot of people that don't access or use care.
And I think as well, you know, people automatically, I think, maybe assume that skills are about qualifications, but they're actually not. The skill to be able to de-escalate a situation, the skill to be able to provide personal care to somebody that is terrified, absolutely terrified, and you don't know why they're terrified, but they're terrified, to be able to ensure that their needs are met safely and that they're provided dignity and respect in that moment. You've got to be skilled to be able to do that, you know, just purely on a personal level as an individual, to be able to communicate effectively. You've got to be able to be skilled. To be able to see somebody's behaviour and know that you need to do this, not this, that's a skill job. And
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
maybe it's the skills that aren't necessarily tangible, that you can't possibly put down on a piece of paper. But yeah, you've got to be proper skilled to do the jobs that people do in social care.
You know, 100%. Even just knowing people's likes and dislikes and how to get the most out of them and the best out of their day for them, you know, that is something that not everybody can do and people do struggle with. And yeah, I'm a big advocate for care workers being seen as the skilled professionals, because they are. I think the other big piece of news in social care is obviously today's announcement of obviously the mandatory vaccine for the NHS and home care. So it's not coming in until the 1st of April next year, 2022. But the Home Care Association has estimated at this precise time that between 120,000 to 140,000 workers will leave the home care sector. That's 25% of the workforce, which is a shocking figure, which I think then obviously impacts on the amount of unmet needs. And I think what, for me personally, the government still hasn't grasped is that actually there's already a large percentage of unmet needs, providers that are struggling to recruit and retain staff, that are handing back calls. You know, some providers are closing the doors because, you know, of whatever reason, and actually it then blocks up the NHS, and that flow just doesn't happen. You know, people are going into hospital and can't get back out. Yeah, what do you think of the news today?
Well, it was predictable, I think. It's a really difficult one because, you know, I don't pass any kind of judgment, and I think whether you agree with vaccines or you don't agree with vaccines, but the point is, we just go, you know, we are eating winter pressures, and I know that the NHS is currently struggling. So what do? It's the devil in the day. You know, we're going to lose. If you add up the NHS figures, what we're losing this week, what we're going to lose from Doncare, that's 250,000 people. That's horrific.
Yeah.
And that's horrific when you think of a system that, I tell you what, it's got more cracks than my antique china. Do you know what I mean? And a system that's so poorly underfunded that it's frightening. And, you know, I think for me, I'm not really looking forward to what's going to happen over the winter. But having said that, we just have to keep going, don't we?
Yeah, I think we have to remain positive, don't we?
We do. And I think maybe it's just, maybe not even positive, but realistic. we know it's going to be difficult, and let's just take each day as it comes. And they're damned if they do, and they're damned if they don't. What you do, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't know the answer. I do like to. I like to think that times are going to get tough, but actually, the tougher they get, the more the government are going to realise quite how bad both systems
are. Sometimes things have to fall apart to be able to be rebuilt in the way that they should be rebuilt. And, we don't appreciate the sunshine unless we have the clouds and the rain, do we?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I like to think that actually this has pulled so many providers together, so many managers and people working in social care. It's pulled us all and united us that actually going forward, we've got that united front and that voice as a collective. Whereas before the pandemic, we didn't have that. It was all of us just talking.
No, absolutely. And it was about providers doing their own thing in their own lane. Whether that would be challenging the local authority over fee increases individually as providers. But together, there's been so much innovation over the last kind of 18 months, and actually far more talk of people. We wouldn't have been doing this 18 months, 2 years ago. And think about all the other exciting platforms that are out there, and people talking together about new ideas, and what if we do this and what if we do that. This sort of stuff wouldn't have happened. So yes, it's really difficult. Yes, it's really bad. Yes, it's not fair. It's really not fair. But what you do, because there's staff that have already left and have gone to other jobs. So do you delay this week's decision, and then that impacts on them, or do you do what they've done and they've kind of gone, well, we know we're going into winter pressures, we're going to kind of have to do it next year and put it off? Yeah, that's not fair. But not much in life is fair sometimes.
Yeah, no, I'm the first to call out the government, but no government would know what to do. It's even like with COVID and everything. I think like you said, they're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't, and we've just got to roll with the decisions that they make. It's
unprecedented, isn't it? We've not been in times like this before, and I suppose if we have, the world was a very different place. You think about the Spanish flu. Social care wasn't even around when we had Spanish flu. Do you know what I mean? So it's a difficult one, and I think for me, it's when, like, maybe the narrative is played out in the media that makes you kind of think, well, hang on a minute, what are you trying to say here? And without kind of just making sure that we're telling it how it really is. And it's about people telling it how it really is. And going back to the Ed Balls programme, I think that really made it clear about how it is, and it's hard.
Yeah, no, definitely, I 100% agree.
But to see the animation in some of the people's faces, and the smiles and the joy and the giggles and just the banter, it's all that sort of stuff that keeps me in social care. If it's all the 100 Elvises that go around care homes all over the country, it's the special memories that you make, and those special memories, I don't know that I'd make them anywhere else.
I was about to say, I don't think, and I know obviously Christmas is coming up. I think it's the first Christmas that I've never ever worked. I mean, I might do. I don't know what's around the corner, but at the moment it'll be the first Christmas I've ever worked. But actually, I look back and I think of all those, like you said, those memories of Christmas with the people that I was supporting. And actually, they're different memories than what my family do at Christmas. And 100%. We're losing a lot of workforce to Amazon and Ocado and Waitrose and places like that. But actually, stacking the shelves and delivering parcels will not bring you the same satisfaction as looking after somebody.
No, absolutely. I think back to when I first started in care at 15, and some of the memories that even now, all these years on, and I'm not going to tell you how many years because it'll give away my age, but all these years on, and I can think there was one lady, and she used to sit at the piano, roll her trousers up, she'd pretend to paddle in the sea while she was banging away on the piano. And all these years later, I can still remember that moment, like with joy in my heart, and because it just she was so animated. And
when you play a piano now, do you bang your feet like that?
No, I certainly don't roll my trousers up. I did that once when I was about 15, and I was on holiday in Malta, and I got my jeans wet and I got them stuck, and my mum had to cut my jeans. So I learnt the hard way.
So on to tonight. So I didn't do introductions at the beginning, and then I started rambling on. In my head, I was thinking I should have done introductions first. But for anybody that doesn't know you, Lucy, please can you introduce yourself and what you do?
Okay, so my name's Lucy Buxton, and I've got a little business. So that's LJB Coach Consultancy Limited. I'm a nurse, and I'm also an NLP trainer. As well as I have lots of other little qualifications that I kind of got in there. So I do hypnosis and things, technique called timeline resourcing, and I'm a train coach. So yeah.
You say a little company, but with big impact. So
yeah, possibly a little company with a big heart. Yeah, so I've worked for myself for 3 years, and I also do I do some nursey stuff. And I've had done some really good nursey stuff, certainly the last 18 months. I felt very privileged. I was able to work last year with 4 CCGs and do some of the leader reviews, the learning disability mortality reviews. I felt very privileged doing that, to be able to advocate for people who are not here anymore, to be able to make changes for people who are here, and to be able to review care. So I felt very privileged to do that. So kind of nursey stuff.
Yeah. So you said you used to be in the nurse, obviously, though years ago, and you're not giving away your age. What made you move into social care? Because obviously we normally hear people leaving social care to go into the NHS. So yeah, what made you make that transition?
So, well, I started in social care, kind of the very early days where long-term kind of stay wards in hospitals, they kind of realised that wasn't kind of the model anymore, and they discovered this thing called care homes. So I went from working in Dillon's newsagents to working in the care home, one because it paid more money, but 2 because I wanted to be a nurse. So I did that. It was my Saturday and Sunday job, and school holidays, and yeah, it was a baptism of fire, and hoists didn't exist, and kind of. Yeah, it was interesting. So then I went off and trained to be a nurse, because I always wanted to be a nurse. And I think I was either going to be a nurse or a policewoman. And I think I ruled out the policewoman when I did my work experience with school at about 15. And I thought, no, I'll be a nurse. One of my earliest memories is of me at 3 in my little nurse's uniform, giving my mum this little cup of tea on a saucer, and she'd come out of hospital. And so I kind of think it was always there. My cousin's a nurse. My gran was a nurse as well, so she was a nurse and you were a Red Cross nurse, so maybe it's just kind of in the genes. So yes, I qualified and I went to work in the NHS. I did orthopaedics, and I worked on a ward that I felt very uncomfortable in, and the values of the culture on the ward didn't align with me, so I left. Went to work in A&E, and I realised at that point in time that I needed to be able to care for people who I'd actually built a relationship with, so as to be able to provide them dignity and respect long term. I had quite a few traumatic experiences working in that A&E, and I was young, and I don't know that I felt supported. So I think that's something that we can learn from. We know we need to support our staff. So I left, went to work in a brand new nursing home as a nurse, and I worked my way up. Deputy manager, then a manager, and this, that, and the other, and yeah, so that's what I did. And then I sidestepped, went back to the NHS when I had my daughter, so 17 years ago, and I went to be a case manager in the community with older adults, and that was before the long-term conditions modern matron model came out, and it was a really diverse team. There was like housing officers and me as a general nurse and social workers. So that was great. It was, even though it was NHS, it was very much like
together.
Management in the community. It was great. And then from there, I went and did an admission avoidance project at a large inner city hospital. Again, working very much with social care and referring out to nursing homes and getting people into respite and stuff. And then I was redeployed and went into CHC, continuing healthcare, and I worked with a large inner city council when we decommissioned over 30 of their homes. So I was responsible for the nursing assessments and continuing health needs of the people, and worked with a big team of social workers. Closed all these homes and moved them all into lovely private sector homes, and then got redeployed again. So I came back to social care. Yes, I came back to social care, and that's where I've stayed since. And then up until 3 years ago, and yeah, that was when I was head of compliance for a company. We got over 1,000 beds, and then it was at the point where I set up my own little business, and yeah, here I am.
So you've got a lot of experience of care, and I know that before the show we spoke, and you ended up caring for your mum and your daughter, and you've had some bad experiences of mental health with children, and you can elaborate that if you want or not. I'll leave that up to you. But do you feel like that's kind of led you to where you are now, to to having your own business and what you do now?
Yeah, massively. So 3.5 years ago, my mum had been poorly all my life. I don't recall her being well, and she struggled dreadfully with depression. And I guess partly a lot of her stuff was maybe generational trauma. My grandfather was a Quaker, and he was a conscientious objector. So he was an ambulance driver for the Red Cross, and he went into places like Buxton. So the trauma that he would have experienced, we now know today, PTS, we can support people, we can give people the appropriate support. He didn't have it. He just shut down. He was just quiet. Whether that manifested in other ways, he developed epilepsy. So my mum had to deal with that as a child, which must have been very traumatic for her. And then she had some big life events which she didn't deal with. She just kind of shoved them away and put them in a bucket, I suppose. So as a teenager, I nursed my mum, and being around her with depression was hard. So I suppose that's where I got a lot of my understanding of what it's like to live with somebody who struggles with mental health.
Yeah.
And she had ECT, so electric shock therapy, to help her with the depression. And unfortunately, chicken and egg, she then developed dementia later on in life, which we knew that was a risk of the ECT at the time that we were told that. So yeah, she lived with dementia, but she was also physically poorly. So 3.5 years ago, yeah, she got much worse, and I guess I've had to make a choice, and so I nursed her with my dad at home. And at the same time, we discovered that my daughter was poorly, and that she'd been hiding the fact that she herself had been struggling with her mental health, depression, self-harm. And, obviously it is a difficult subject. So for anybody that's watching, this might bring up some stuff. But my daughter took an overdose, and she didn't want to live. So I went through a very difficult period of time where I couldn't get support for her. She couldn't get CAMHS intervention. And long story short, my mum passed away, and my daughter got worse to the point where she had to go into hospital. She spent 16 months in hospital. She was sectioned, which the care that she had was nothing short of shocking and appalling. And I guess that's why I mentioned earlier about how my knowledge of what social care has given me, and my knowledge as a nurse, it enabled me to protect my daughter in many ways and stand up for her and advocate for her. Because if I didn't know what I knew and what I know, I wouldn't have been able to ensure that she got the support that she needed.
Yeah, and I suppose on the flip side, when you're doing reviews and bits and pieces now, using your daughter's experience, you probably make sure that you stand up for people, and you know exactly what you've been through, what she's been through, to actually make sure that people know how to argue it, and to push back on the sector.
No, massively so. And it's also the understanding that I had about the fear of reprisal that she would get. So whenever I reported where she was to the regulator, there was always a backlash.
Yeah.
So lots of things happened. It's done, it's in the past. It was a very difficult time for us. We have, as a family, put our thoughts and feelings in writing and had the apologies that we needed. And we've closed the door on that. But at that point in time, there was no way that I could continue to do my job. And I decided that I had to put me and my family first. So I left my job. That was really hard. Really, really hard to walk away from a job and a company that I loved, people that I absolutely adored. And I set up my business. I think my experience, it's made me, I give from a different place. So when I was going through all this with my daughter, I guess there was no way that I could deal with it properly on my own. So I found myself a counsellor, and I took myself off to the counsellor every week. And it was counselling, it was a safe space for me to talk and for me to say, this has happened. This can't be right, can it? Honestly, this isn't right, is it? I'm not going mad here. They can't do this to me or my daughter. And I'd get a coffee in my hand, and I'd get the cat sat on my lap. And that's what I did for an hour every week for 9 months. And it got me through. It really got me through, because I wasn't carrying all that stuff on my own.
Yeah.
And I wasn't burdening anybody that didn't have the knowledge and the skills to be able to deal with what I was talking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely. And can I just say that it's actually really proud, and it's great that you're talking so openly and candid about it, because so many people hide it away, and but actually talking about it really helps move people. And there'll be people watching this that I know that are going through tough times, and actually talking about mental health is a real positive step forward. So I just wanted to just say thank you for sharing that experience.
Thank you. I mean, what can I say? I can choose to talk about it. This is the first time I've really publicly talked about it. And I think the reason why was when we were at the care show, Toby said to me, how did you get to be where you are?
Yeah.
And I said, well, my daughter was really poorly. This is what happened, and he said that story needs to be told. So if my sharing my story gives faith to somebody else, my daughter was very poorly. She did not want to leave. Even now, I get private number come up on my phone, and it's like it's the hospital what they're ringing to tell me now. But the wonderful thing about all of it is that she's fabulous, and she's doing so well, so that there is light the other side, and we can go through things that we think at the time are just so unbelievably painful and dark and horrendous. I mean, for me to have nursed my mum and have my mum pass away, and to be there with my daughter. I mean, 2 days before my mum died, I had my daughter in hospital. So I was, who do I go to? That's how difficult it got. But to be able to go through that, to come out the other side, and to think, what can I do with all of this, with what I've learned? What can I do to make a difference and to do something positive? So so that was it. 3 years ago, October. I set up my own business because I knew that the only way that I could work was to work for me.
I think that's great, because you were tied between your mum and your daughter, the two biggest people in your life. Like you said, who do you choose? And actually from that you've set up LJB Consultancy. Tell us more about that, and what because it's not just a normal consultancy company. When I first met you on LinkedIn and on Clubhouse and on social media, and I remember looking, I remember first thing I thought on your website was, this is different than a lot of consultancy. It's there's the support there for managers and staff, and tell us more.
So I can do the mock inspections and the audits and stuff, but what I realised was I think I've known this all the way through my career. You know, I've always kind of coached, but I've always felt very uncomfortable with writing a report and just leaving it. You know, I kind of want to get stuck in and do the do. And I know a lot of people out there do exactly the same and have the same kind of feeling. So I'm not special in that way. But I've always liked to look at people and dynamics and how cultures and teams are. And, you know, I've seen it that many times professionally, but certainly the experience I had with my daughter being in hospital, the hospital she was in a very dire state with the regulator, and seeing the impact that a culture had on the staff, the turnover of the staff, and I mean turnover, and then the impact it had on the people they were caring for and the families, you know, the ripple effect of it. You know, it's all very well and good having an action plan and an audit, but unless the people that are putting in the actions are in the right mindset, have the right values, know where they're going, are following people who are really modelling those behaviours, then the action plan's really pointless.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I know you said that there's a lot of people that have the same mindset as you, but actually there are so many consultants out there and consultancy companies that do exactly what you just said, put an action plan in, then walk away and leave the provider, the manager to deal with it, and actually don't give them the tools and the support to actually follow that through.
Or demonstrate or show how things work. So for me to be able to add in the knowledge and skills that I've got, so obviously the NLP knowledge, the understanding how we do what we do, the other level of communication, listening to people's words, understanding that people are not their behaviours, and then really looking at things from the values level. So understanding that, you know, there are different traits for different values and we're all at different points in our life. And then obviously I'm also a consultant for the Judgment Index, which Judgment Index UK. So that's a values-based tool that looks at your work side and your self side. So I can kind of put all that together. And I think what I've learned throughout my career is that for me, the way I learn is show me, let me do. So for me to actually demonstrate with a member of staff why they may be responding to another member of staff in a certain way, then that means that people have got a better understanding and they can achieve the action that they're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Because ultimately the action plan then just becomes nothing more than wallpaper. You know, just stick it on the wall because it means nothing. Unless you can get people on the same page with their values and understanding why we're asking them to do what they're doing, and then people understanding how people's behaviour works. We're not our behaviour. You know, our behaviour is based on a feeling, a state, you know, which is generated from a thought. So just because somebody might be a bit huffy, or I might feel that they're a bit huffy, that doesn't mean that they're being grumpy with me. And understanding all of that actually helps you build your team better, which means you're going to have far better results with your audit.
Yeah, and I think your outlook on how you do it is really refreshing. I remember, you know, as a young manager, I would have an action plan, and it would be things that we weren't doing, and some of it I would know, you know, it was there. You need to do this. That's fine. And some of it would be new processes, and I'd think to myself, I'm 20. I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. And I'd only ever worked for one company when I first managed a care home. And I remember just going online and having to Google it and network with other managers. And actually, if I had had somebody like you there showing me and, you know, guiding me and giving me your kind of insights, it would have actually been so much better. And actually, like you said, all I did was tick off the things that I knew I could do and then waited for, you know, the external person to come back, re-audit and say you haven't done it, and then be like, well, actually, I don't know how to do it, but, you know, you disappeared and I didn't have any contact details for you. I didn't know, you know, what to do. So...
And also understanding how it must feel to receive that audit. You know, you've got somebody sitting there and that's like what they're going to find, and you're worrying about, which is a normal response to somebody poking around and having a little nosy. And then when you get that in black and white, and the feeling that you're left with, and then you think, how am I going to get all of this done? It can be done in a better way, in a way that enables somebody to feel more empowered to be able to do something and to achieve a task. I mean, some months ago, I remember going to a home where they'd got an incident report they needed to understand about what happened with the incident. And one staff member went to this staff member who was there at the time and said, oh, and then immediately they got what they felt was a negative response from the staff member. Then another staff member went and asked the same question and got the same negative response. So then I went up and said, can I have a go? So I went up and I was like, are you busy? Is this a convenient time? I need to understand how this happens. So there's no blame here. I need you to explain it so I can then explain it. You know, we talked through it. And I said, how did that make you feel when that happened? And she said, I felt really guilty, really scared and really upset. So the guilty fear and scared was why she then thought, when these people go into it and say, what happened here? She was being defensive because she thought she was going to be in trouble.
And I think that goes back to what you were saying a minute ago, when you get that action plan, because it's your service and it's your name above the door, you do take it very personally, because it's almost a criticism of the work that you've done. And I think one thing, when I looked on your website about the services you offer, one thing that was prominent is, and what we were talking about, is actually how you support managers and staff. You know, a very topical kind of subject at the moment with burnout and managers that are leaving the sector because they don't feel supported. Can you tell me more about how you support managers? Because actually, I think this is a really crucial thing. And actually, I follow you on social media, and I'll come to that later. But actually, something I think you should be shouting about as a service that you offer, because I think it's very much needed at the moment.
All sorts of talk therapy, coaching. But obviously, I follow a kind of a process, and I use different techniques. So ultimately, I could have a manager that might have a goal they want to achieve. It could be something simple, or it could be that somebody's feeling just so overwhelmed. I don't know how to deal with all of this. I can't deal with the changes in guidance. I can't deal with the relative turning up, refusing to wear a mask. I can't deal with my stroppy staff. They've got all of this. And all they've done is collect all of this stuff. And when we go through something, like an event or a phone call, and we have an emotional response to that, or a reaction, and we don't deal with that emotion, all we do is store the emotion. So the emotion gets stored with the memory. So then if you have an event of fear, and then you have another event that's got fear, and then another, all those events of fear just get stuck together, almost like a string of pearls. So then we just end up very fearful, and we can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So the process I go through, it enables people to talk about the stuff that they've been through, but it's a forward moving process, whereas counselling's pretty much talking about the problem. So I'll happily let somebody talk about the problem, and they can talk and talk and talk. But then I use techniques that can help change the way that they view things. They help them let go of those negative emotions easily and effortlessly. One of the techniques I use, timeline resourcing, it's used a lot, certainly in America, for people with PTS, because you don't need to relive the event. You don't need to go into the emotion. So it's a case of using your imagination, and just working with your unconscious mind, and actually reprogramming the way that we do what we do. Listening a lot to language. So where people say a part of me wants to do this and a part of me wants to do that, that then gives me an indication that there's a certain technique I need to do, because the unconscious mind works so much better if it works as a whole rather than part of it doing one thing and part of it doing another. And it's either done face to face or over Zoom. And ultimately, I take somebody from where they're feeling overwhelmed or they can't achieve the goal that they want to achieving the goal. So it's a forward moving process. So where we've got managers at the moment who are so exhausted, burnt out, overwhelmed, working with somebody like me, it enables them a different perspective. So I could turn around, and if they said, perfect example, real example, a manager said to me some weeks back, I'm sick and tired of the provider. He's always looking at my emails. always looking at my emails, and then he emails me when I need to read a certain email. Yeah, I can't have another member of staff to do my breakfasts.
Yeah.
And I listened and I said, you know, it's really kind of your provider to look at your emails. She was like, how dare you look at my emails? That's violating my, you know, really. And I get it. No judgment whatsoever. I completely and utterly get it. You must feel horrible to be put in a position of responsibility and then somebody going through all your emails and telling you to read this. So I just turned around and I said, that's brilliant. I said, you go and work on the floor where you're happy with your staff. I said, because he'll let you know when there's an email you need to read.
Yeah, it's just changing the mindset, isn't it? Yeah, it's no different than a PA, is it?
Looking at it differently. We all know the guidance is going to come on a Friday, and we all know there are going to be changes in it. Yeah. So just accept it. Don't resist it. Just accept it. Changing the way we think about things, reframing things, using different techniques to kind of quieten the mind down, like peripheral vision, and because we're always forward focused, we're always on the phone, we're always on the computer. But we've lost this ability, and we don't use it as much because we don't need it to evolve to use our peripheral vision. So looking at here. But when we use that, it actually quietens our brain, and it quietens down the self-talk, and it stops the chatter, and it just relaxes us. So if we can learn how to do that, so I'm talking to you and I'm in peripheral vision and I can see what's going on the other side of the room, but I'm not nervous because I'm in peripheral vision.
It's funny you said that because I can see the table that's right over that side out the corner of my eye.
So something that you can learn to do, something as simple as that. And also understanding and learning more about us as individuals and how we process the world and how we take in information and understand how we take in that information. For many years, people would say to me, oh, you're so sensitive, you're too sensitive. But it was only when I realised that I process my world visually and then I get a feeling very, very quickly afterwards, I understood why. So I guess I help people understand themselves and to change the patterns of behaviour that they've got so that they are more effective in what they're doing, and so that they can be more in control of themselves, more at cause, not at effect. So when things happen, I'm okay with it all. I'm not going to be reacting to what's going on around me. So you can do with whatever you want with your vaccines and this and that and the other, because I just deal with it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good outlook on life. And one of the other services, and it kind of ties in with this that you offer, is supporting people at a crossroads. And I think, again, it comes at a time where there's a lot of people in social care thinking, do I stay in the sector? Do I go somewhere else? The pay might be better. And I know before, obviously, we said that, you know, actually you can go somewhere else, but it won't give you that same satisfaction as caring for somebody will. What would your advice be to somebody that is at a crossroads? So it might be a manager, it could be a care worker, anybody that is kind of thinking, I've had enough, you know, I've dealt with 19, 20 months of COVID, it isn't getting any easier, I hate the PPE, my friends are out having fun. What would your advice be?
Well, first of all, I think their feelings are completely valid, completely and utterly valid, because these are times we've not been through before. And we're a generation that have got different skills to what maybe previous generations had been. You know, so if we think about in the war, families lived on the same street together. We don't do that anymore. We communicate over social media and our attention is taken by so much all the time. We're fed so much information all the time, and it's so easy to access stuff. You know, years ago, it would have been taking 6-8 weeks to you to get a telegram. You've got it there in a second.
Yeah.
So people's feelings are really valid, and actually they've been through a lot of trauma, where if they haven't had the time or haven't been given the facility or the support to deal with the trauma that they've been through at that point in time, then it's only going to sit there. It's going to sit in their bucket, their metaphorical bucket, and it's going to fill up. And at some point, that bucket's going to just get so full, they're going to feel, can't do this anymore. And then what happens is we start getting all of those feelings like frustration, anger, sadness, hurt, can't stand it. And they're away from most emotions. So they give us the momentum to get away from things that we can't be near anymore. So the best way to describe this, I think, is we've all had that girlfriend, boyfriend where it's been really like bad. And then you're like, I'm never going on a dating site again. I'm not doing that. Yeah. So
Well, I've never been on a dating site.
Have you not? Have you not?
No, I met my wife when I was 17, long before the world of
that's so lovely.
Yeah.
That's so lovely.
I'd be a nightmare.
Anyway, I can assure you this happened. So then what happens is you go, I'm never going near another man, woman ever again. They're all the same, da, da, da. And you're pushed by all of these away from emotions. And they're okay sometimes, a bit of frustration's okay. It gives us a bit of movement. But long term, all these away from emotions, it's just not healthy. They're not good. And it will push us away from where we're at. And then at some point in time, we're going to be a bit lost. We're not going to really know where we're at. And the thing is that we're seeing so many people going from one environment to something that's so drastically different. And that's because they need to get away from where they're at. Get away from where they're at. I need to go and do something completely different because I can't even consider that anymore. And then eventually what's going to happen is, like I say, people will be lost. And we've all got our own purpose, what our own individual purpose is. And a lot of people in care, it's to care. It's to help other people. It's to make the difference. And they're going to be in these environments where they're not going to have their purpose met and they're going to feel really lost. So for somebody that's thinking, I can't deal with this anymore, be honest. Acknowledge it and not feel that you're going to be a burden because you are going to say, I need this help. The one thing I can relate to was when my daughter was very poorly in the first place and said, why didn't you tell me? She said, because you'd got enough. I didn't want to be a burden. She kept it all to herself because she thought she could sort it herself. And this is in a young teenager's mind. She was 13 and a half at the time and she thought she could do it. So we've got so many managers, so many deputies, so many ops people, CEOs that thinking, I need to keep doing this. I need to keep putting on this brave face. Actually, no, you don't. It really is okay to just put your hand up and say, I'm struggling with this. Because as soon as you acknowledge that and as soon as you say I'm struggling with this, that's the biggest step.
Yeah, 100%.
Turn around and say, I just need some help. And you don't have to feel that the help you need to take is something that maybe society perceives with a bit of a stigma, maybe counselling. Because you can turn around and say, well, actually, I'm having coaching, which people think is about growth and forward movement. And a coach takes you from one place to another. So I would, if you are thinking right now, I can't do this anymore. I get that. I completely and utterly get that. And that's really, really understandable. And it's about saying, I can't do this anymore. And actually opening up and admitting that. And if that's where you're at right now, that's okay. But it's not okay not to do anything about it because those feelings will not go away. And 6 months down the line, something will happen and they'll pop up.
Yeah.
12 months down the line, something will happen and pop up. I saw somebody only a matter of weeks ago at one of the exhibitions, and I was just having a chat, and they had been in a big role and they left because of all these feelings. And they actually stood there and said, I thought I'd dealt with it, but talking to you, I know I haven't. And unless we actually do deal with it, it won't go away. It will stay there. It will be stored. And then at some point, your unconscious mind will give it you back because it wants you to sort it out. So for anybody, just say. And if you can't go to your employer and say, because I've got people see me who their employer is paying for them to see me. If you can't do that, then just drop me a message. I support people just over Messenger. I'll happily jump on Zoom, even if it's just for a quick coffee, just to say, you know what, you're not on your own, I'm here. But reaching out is the most important thing you can possibly do.
Thank you very much. We've had a comment from Dean, just saying, so great to hear your positivity, Lucy, as always. So touching on what Dean has said, now, I originally came across you on social media, on LinkedIn, and obviously I'm on LinkedIn and on social, and I found myself commenting on a lot of posts that you had commented on, and we're in the same kind of Facebook groups. And I think nowadays when I look on social media, there's very few people that I find inspiring, but you're definitely up there in probably my top 5 people that I find inspiring. And I don't know what it is.
I'm so humbled by that, because I think you're so inspiring too.
Oh, thank you very much. I think it's just your posts are just, they're real. They're not kind of hard selling anything. They're inspirational. They're just photos of you and selfies. And I take a lot of selfies and I don't put them on, but they're just full of energy. And what do you hope to achieve from kind of your social media? I think like Dean has said, actually, you get that positivity from your social media when you go on your LinkedIn and you post it. It is there. I don't know how to describe it. It is just there.
Making a difference. That's it. Just making the difference. I didn't have anybody when I was going through what I went through with my daughter. I didn't. In a lot of ways, you know, I tagged a few people in a post I put on LinkedIn the other day, a couple of colleagues, a couple of people for different reasons that kind of were there. And if the only thing that I achieve is that somebody reads my post and actually thinks, yeah, I get that, I resonate with that, and it makes that little bit of difference there, and then I've done something, because it's a ripple effect. I write a newsletter, which you get my newsletter, don't you?
I do get your newsletter. Yes, I am subscribed. Yeah. I am. Yes. Tea with Lucy, isn't it? Is it tea with
Coffee with Lucy?
Coffee
with Lucy. 5 minutes. Yeah. And it's not, you know, people do this stuff for lead magnets, don't they? But I don't. I just wanted to share stuff that I know makes the difference, and it's just my witterings. And if I'd have, well, and in a way I did. When my daughter was in hospital, a girlfriend, we used to just walk the dogs. That's what we used to just do. And it was being stood on the canal, seeing the colours on the trees change from summer colours to autumn colours, and then just laughing at the random dogs. And I couldn't talk about much stuff because I just functioned, you know, I just kind of got on with it. But it was that she just made the difference. The dogs just made the difference. And if all I do by posting is make the difference, that somebody somewhere's watching, that just says, actually, do you know what? I just need this. This is what, and then they reach out. Then I've achieved what I'm looking to achieve. And I don't want to do the big sell. It doesn't sit with my values. I'll never be a millionaire. Money's not high enough up in my values. But you know, if all it does is just brings a bit of smile to my day or somebody else's day, then great. When my daughter was in hospital, she would have access to her email, and I'm quite kind of a spiritual kind of person, and I used to have, like, I've got lots of like angel cards or cards with messages on, or motivational cards, and I used to just pull one every day, and I'd just take a screenshot of it and send it as an email, and quite often it was just enough that gave her that little bit of something, that little bit of hope. And I think this is quite interesting to talk about, really. A thing called the Stockdale paradox, which I wrote about in one of my newsletters. So for those that don't know about the Stockdale paradox, is got a cool name, James von Stockdale, and he was a US. I think he was an Air Vice Marshal off the top of my head. Can't remember. Anyway, he was a pilot in the Vietnam War, and he was shot down. He was held prisoner. Horrific. And he was asked afterwards, why did some people not come out of the camps, and he did? And he said it was those that always attached hope to a certain date. So, it'll be fine by Christmas. It'll be fine by Easter. And what he said was that you have to have hope, but you must not confuse it with the reality of the brutal, horrible facts of where we're at. And there is hope. There is hope for social care, but it doesn't remove the reality of where we're at right now. And whilst we deal with that in a factual way, in a brutal way, in an honest way, whilst we still hold on to that hope. And if my posts are that hope, that give that little glint, then you know what, we can deal with the brutal reality of the day.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Troy has commented as well, just thanking you for sharing your story. And Troy is also somebody like you that is very active on social media now. Just seems to have popped up over the last few weeks. So. I think it's great. I think it's great that you go on LinkedIn, and it used to be so business minded and talking about, business things, where actually now it's more about inspiring people and finding motivational messaging. And I personally think it's perfect. But yeah, I find I use LinkedIn a lot more.
Business is people, isn't it? We work in a business where we work with people. We do not work with widgets. So unless we actually look at where people are, then we know history tells us that we then have these problems later on in life when we have like generational trauma or, PTS, or we end up with people not being able to do what they need to do. So unless we taught people stuff, unless I share my story about my daughter, the fact that she's actually got a condition called premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is barely talked about. It takes the average female 12 years to get diagnosed with that. That shouldn't happen. We need to talk about this, because if other females know, if other males know that have females in their lives, if other dads know that this is what their daughters are going through, then they can actually turn around and say, if managers know that this is what some of their staff could be going through. So unless we talk about stuff, unless we talk about the real human experience, how can we do what we do?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what's great is we've got people like you in the managers groups, Troy's in there, I'm in there, Dawn, and we're sharing all this content. Actually, I think that draws out people actually saying, actually, I relate with that. I've got this going on. And then it just opens up that conversation to what we can do to support them. Other people jump in, and it just becomes more of a conversation about, actually, we do this, try this, we tried that, don't do that. And yeah, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Networking and helping others.
Massively so, because what is it? A fool does the same thing and expects a different outcome. It doesn't work that way. We're evolving as a society. We've evolved massively this last 18 months in so many ways. So we have to evolve too. And those of us that are in the sector that know how the sector works, then we're the ones that are in the right place to drive the evolution and the innovation, because we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, no, definitely. Another person who's very active on social media, Dudley, thanking you, loving your story and your open discussion. It relates to what you're doing. So yeah, no, great to see you, Dudley. Benjamin as well has commented as well for you. So he's still in social care because of you, Lucy.
Yeah, I know. Oh, and Ben's one of those managers that, and he hasn't got a problem with me saying this, because I've got his testimonial on my website, but he was up here. He really was. He couldn't take anymore. That was it. He was going to throw in the towel a lot. Now he's still got his outstanding rating. He's got staff desperate to work for him. He's got waiting lists for people to go into his service. It's just because he sorted out his stuff and he stayed in the sector, which
is key. That's what we want, is people staying within the sector. I'm very conscious of time. It seems to have just flown by. I feel like I've only been speaking to you for 5 minutes, and I've got so many other things that I could easily talk to you about. Is there anything you want to talk about with your job or any of the services you offer that we haven't touched on that you really want people to know about? And for me personally, I think it is around the support that you give to managers that actually I didn't realise until a few days ago. So yeah, anything.
I think for me, businesses need to think differently. You can choose to spend 5 to 10 grand on a brand new registered manager. You've got a choice. Or you do something different and you get somebody like me engaged with that manager before they leave. That's a choice. You can let your carers walk away, or you can get somebody like me in who can actually help them as a team, look at their values, look at your culture, actually do timeline resourcing. I can do it for a whole group, and within an hour and a half, I can get them feeling a heck of a lot better. So I think it's about people taking responsibility for where they're at and doing things differently and doing things that are a bit outside the box.
Definitely. And I'll share your contact details again, your website. for anybody that wants to get in contact with you outside of your website, you're obviously active on.
Yeah, LinkedIn or even Facebook. Find me on Facebook. I've got a Facebook business page. I've also got a little group on Facebook, but it's only very little. But yeah, just reach out. And if somebody doesn't know how to get hold of me, then get hold of somebody that does, and then obviously they'll be able to put in the right direction.
Yeah, if there is anybody watching that can't find Lucy, then drop us a message to the Caring View on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and we'll put you in touch with Lucy.
And I don't just do 9 to 5. I work evenings or weekends, and yeah.
Don't we all in social care? Don't we all?
Also, really exciting news. I've had a log cabin built in the garden, so I've actually got a space where I can see people face to face, away from work, and I have my first face to face person tomorrow, which is really exciting. So yeah.
Sounds relaxing just talking about it. A log cabin,
I'll take
nice
some
and
pictures.
cozy and warm.
And put them on LinkedIn.
Yeah, no, definitely do. So we'll make sure we share them. So, well, thank you very much for joining us. The time has literally flown by. It normally does go quick, and I remember saying to you, "It'll go quick," but not normally is this quick. So, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you, Lucy, for joining us. And yeah, we'll make sure that we share your contact details on our social media platform. So,
thank you for asking me. It's a big privilege.
No, it's a pleasure having you. It's been great talking.
All right. You take care.
Good night. And you.
Bye all.
Bye.
Thank you again for joining us tonight on The Caring View. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And whilst you're here, check out some of the other videos that we've got up online. If you've got something that you think may be interesting for us to discuss, or if you want to guest spot with us, then drop us an email to thecaringview@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter, find us on Facebook. All the information is down there in the description box. But until then, have a good evening, stay safe, and we'll see you next week.